Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Chair. I've been a senator for less than 100 days. Yet, as I travel across Queensland and the wider nation, I truly feel a sense of renewed vigour in rural and regional communities because government has committed itself to supporting the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead for those in areas outside the major metropolitan and high population centres. This government recognises the need to support and enhance the viability and capacity of our communities in rural and regional Australia. It should be noted that the Prime Minister has repeatedly told the world that Australia is open for business. Some people have mistaken that declaration by the Prime Minister to mean that Australia is up for sale. I believe that that was not the intended message. Whilst all in government have an open mind with respect to foreign ownership, particularly the nuances associated with the ownership in the agriculture and processing sector, I am of the opinion that the statement related to a commitment on the part of government to work with trade partners in a modern, globalised economy that has, as its collective objective, fair and equitable trading arrangements that bring mutual prosperity to the participating nations. However, this goal cannot be achieved unless the government demonstrates a commitment to working in partnership with the private sector in these communities to pursue and realise these significant economic development opportunities. Our nation is confronting a critical juncture as we see mining revenues, which we have so heavily depended on in the early years of this century, commence to decline. This was inevitable. As this mining boom comes to an end, we are again experiencing a shift in focus to the so-called soft commodities in agriculture. More and more we are hearing economists say that a vibrant, innovative and competitive agricultural sector will be one of the pillars essential to underpinning a diverse, world-class Australian economy into this 21st century. Rural and regional Australia is poised to reap the benefits of this transition. The rise of agriculture as a major focus of the Australian economy is not a new concept. This is not a new economy. It is an old and indeed important economy that is returning to prominence. Whilst this nation has been trading and exporting commodities since British occupation, the terms and conditions that will frame this future trade opportunity will look very little like anything we have experienced previously. Modern export markets demand the very best product and produce that we can deliver, where, to the extent possible, goods are free of traces of hormones, pesticides, herbicides and, for some, the existence of genetic adjustment. These goods need to be fresh and they need to be delivered in pristine condition. They need to meet the customer standards and they need to be priced competitively, as they need to be better than that of our trading competitors. In export parlance, quality is the new black. Where our export trade involves livestock, there has been demands of social licence made on our exporters that has continued to affect the trading commodity all the way through the downstream supply chain until the animals are humanely processed. Long gone are the days when we can do what we like with our exports because we have them and our customers do not. However, I remain troubled by the increasing intervention of environmental groups in this process. In recent years, a number of certification and labelling programs have been imposed on business in the effort towards perceived sustainability certification systems as defined by multinational corporations. These programs have been promoted by corporately sponsored activist groups as reflective of the community's environmental and social concerns. These programs have, more often than not, included auditing by third-party organisations where the costs of the process are met by the producer-grower community. Whether it is in forestry, seafood or palm oil, the formula employed by the Green Movement on industry is the same. Activist groups, such as the WWF, apply public pressure on both industry and on business. These activist groups continue to lead and sometimes use commercial intimidation until private enterprise agrees to join the activist programs. The end result is a scheme that simply adds a further level of regulation and cost to these businesses. Furthermore, and as previously stated, There is evidence that indicates that some of these groups are funded, in part, by end users in the food supply chain that are more motivated by adding a marketing edge to its sales campaign than either environmental protection or the economic viability of the relevant industries. It must be noted that less than 2 decades ago, retailers knew little about sustainability and certainly not certification programs that audited those efforts. Therefore, the question arises as to what lay behind the rise in these efforts and how can business best address these consumer concerns, these valid consumer concerns. Mr President, Madam Acting Deputy Chair, my answer is simple. The solution must be directed by industry. It must be driven by the improved promotion of industry's existing efforts in this space. No one wants a sustainable product, both environmental as well as economic, more than I do. However, it is my personal view as a businessman that the most important decisions need to be made by those who have their hands in their own pockets, because ultimately they will be the beneficiary or the victim of the risk and reward strategies that are put into place. In recent weeks, my colleague Senator Boswell and myself have announced the formation of a Squaretable of farming representative groups in response to vocal constituent opposition to Australia's participation in the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. The Squaretable, which will meet for the first time next week, is a steering committee consisting of beef sector organisations that represent grassroots industry stakeholders. Its underlying ambition is to improve communication between these representative bodies to facilitate a unified stance and action plan to deal with significant challenges confronting the beef sector. I have repeatedly said and continue to maintain that the agricultural sector has a bright future as the Asian middle classes look to our nation for a quality and reliable food supply. Our agricultural output remains the envy of the globe and its demand is ever increasing. Australian farmers meet and in most instances exceed any accepted key performance indicators or world's best practices, and so we are well placed to serve these volume market demands as the Asian middle classes expand. Therefore, it is clear that any effort to collate and communicate the industry's sustainability credentials must lay with the private sector, especially those organisations that future viability is dependent on the process. If we are truly to capitalise on the increasing food and fibre demands in this Asian century, then our government must work with private enterprise to reduce the regulatory burdens that jeopardise productivity and viability. Whilst there is no doubt that there is a plenitude of burgeoning opportunities, we must first confront the government's tough fiscal situation so that we can restore stability that increases businesses' abilities to plan. Last night, the government proved its willingness to make the difficult but necessary decisions so that we can ensure prosperity for all in the future. The first Abbott government budget calls on everyone and every business to contribute. We are strengthening the workforce, boosting productivity and building a stronger economy with more investment. But there is still much work to be done. To fully realise the significant opportunities that lay ahead of our nation, the coming years will require an almost obsessive focus from all tiers of government on delivering reforms that enable Australia to remain one step ahead of our international competitors. We must refocus our economy, in part on agriculture and primary production, and those sectors and communities that support these important deliverers of wealth. We must be prepared to be innovative. We must continually question our methods in search for the cutting edge. We must strive never to be complacent, but to always remain committed to being quality trendsetters, not followers. The fundamental goal is to improve returns to the farm gate. This will mean greater resilience and long-term profitability for farmers, more jobs, more investment and stronger regional communities. We now have a strong foundation to begin this next stage of economic development. This government is focused on laying the foundation so that future generations might benefit. In a resource-hungry world, our rural and regional areas hold the key to Australia's prosperity, and every one of us should, and indeed must, contribute to the implementation and strengthening of this vision. I thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Senator O'Sullivan. A quality speech. The Senate stands adjourned now.